Huh, is that your kid? I guess kids of middle school graduate really do turn out ugly. I ran into Jessica, a beautiful classmate who bullied me relentlessly in school, at a fancy restaurant. Jessica even directed her nasty comments toward my daughter, Lily, saying that a child is ugly just because her parent didn't graduate high school. How could she say that to a 9-year-old? As I clenched my fists, Lily sighed and said, "Hey, Dad, maybe you should just fire this woman already." Jessica burst out laughing at Lily's remark. Huh, kids of dropouts really are stupid, huh? What did you just say? You, a little brat like you, think you can get me fired? This is why lowlifes who don't know their place are such a pain. Listen, you and I live in completely different worlds. Worlds that never intersect. Got it? Maybe I should shut that sassy mouth of yours for good. Just as I was about to step in and stop her from lunging at Lily, an elderly man appeared, causing Jessica's face to turn pale. My name is John. I was born premature and spent my childhood plagued by illness, never knowing the joys of playing outside. In the housing complex where I lived with my parents, there were many kids around my age. But playing tag would make me cough, and I'd get sick halfway through hide and seek, so I wasn't much fun to play with. Playing with you is no fun at all. Don't come in. Sick kids should just stay home and rest. Even the older kids, who were kind at first, eventually started avoiding me, and the younger kids followed their lead. Before I knew it, nobody talked to me, even when we passed each other in the courtyard. My parents ran a small metalworking factory as a subcontractor for a large company. They employed a few workers and were always busy, rarely coming home, day or night, as deadlines loomed. I spent my days alone, reading books borrowed from the library. Listening to the joyful laughter outside my window, I always felt a deep, hollow loneliness. I'm sorry, John. Whenever my mother came home late from work, she would apologize to me, as if by habit. I would often rub my mother's thin back as she held back tears. Her body, worn out from overwork, was as fragile as mine. When you start school, I'm sure you'll make good friends. Just hold on a little longer, okay? Clinging to that glimmer of hope, I entered elementary school. Maybe, just as my mother said, I could make some friends too. At first, I truly believed that. But as a skinny, frail kid, I immediately stood out in all the wrong ways as soon as I started school. My lanky frame was dressed in hand-me-down clothes from relatives that didn't fit properly. Even the pencils and notebooks I had were mismatched and awkward, like something you'd find in a factory rather than a school. That kid's weird, right? Yeah, he looks like an alien or something. Just walking down the hallway, I was mocked as malnourished and dirty. If I took my eyes off my things, my shoes and gym clothes would end up torn to shreds in the trash with the dust swept up during cleaning. I would quietly wash them in the sink and take them home in a plastic bag. The humiliation and anger would drive me to silent tears in my bed at night. How's school? Are you having fun? My father was a quiet man. He often stayed overnight at the factory during busy times and rarely came home. But whenever we saw each other, he would ask me about school in his quiet way. He used to have a hard time with asthma too, you know. That's why he worries about you so much. Really? He always tells me not to tell you, though. My mother would smile mischievously, her eyes shadowed by dark circles. Seeing how exhausted she was broke my heart. Despite their own fatigue, they always put me first. I never wanted them to know I was being bullied at school. And so, without seeking help from anyone, my lonely 6 years of elementary school came to an end. Then came spring. I thought that maybe once I started middle school, the bullying would at least die down a bit. But that small hope was quickly crushed when the bullying only intensified. Apparently, some of the kids from my elementary school exaggerated stories about me to the new classmates. Before I knew it, they gave me a cruel nickname, a twisted play on the word germ. Could it really be that, just because I was poor and didn't look the part, I became such a target? I soon found out the reason. The ringleader of the bullying against me was a shockingly beautiful girl. Her name was Jessica. Her father was the CEO of a major metal materials company, and she always wore the latest fashions, flashing a charming, idol-like smile at everyone. But behind that pretty face was something terrifying, and not even the head teacher could stand up to her. Her parents were the heads of the PTA as well. She was at the top of the social hierarchy at school. From the moment I ended up in the same class as her, my hellish bullying experience began. Hey! During self-study time, I instinctively looked up and met Jessica's eyes from a seat one desk away. Her beautiful face twisted into a sneer as she pinched her nose dramatically, giving me a bad feeling. Hey, doesn't it smell dirty in here? Especially around that area. Oh, never mind, it's just Germ Boy after all. Her shrill voice echoed in the room, and her entourage laughed alone. The noisy classroom suddenly went silent, and all eyes were on me. Didn't you hear me? I'm talking to you, loser. The room stinks like germs because of you. Hey! Why don't you do everyone a favor and stop breathing? I'm sorry. I looked down, avoiding the stabbing gazes and mocking laughter. The classroom felt like a bed of nails to me. It became a daily routine to apologize endlessly for any harsh words or baseless accusations thrown at me, just to make them stop. I became so afraid of people's stares that I walked with my head down and my shoulders hunched. But I kept going to school because of my parents. Both of them worked tirelessly, day and night. Whenever a defective product was found, or when deadlines were suddenly moved up, they would be rudely awakened, even during their brief sleep, to deal with complaints. It pained me to see my hard-working parents apologizing to unreasonable demands. I didn't want to become like that. I felt that if I, their son, lost my pride, it would snuff out the smiles of the family I loved so much. If I let my spirit become as poor as we were materially, I would be left with nothing at all. And yet, despite my resolve, my spirit eroded bit by bit. Every time I apologized in the face of their cruel words, it wore me down even more. I gradually lost the ability to sleep, and my stomach would ache every morning before school. Then, when my autonomic nervous system became unbalanced and I fell seriously ill, leading to a long hospital stay, I stopped going to school altogether. I used my health as an excuse to escape the bullying, avoiding even the guilt that came with it. After I became truant, I gave up on going to high school and started helping out with my parents' work. The factory needed all the manpower it could get. At first, I handled administrative tasks, but before I knew it, I was hauling heavy loads like the other workers, running around the factory grounds until late at night. I wanted to work hard and ease the burden on my family, but reality was harsh on someone like me, with no education and little understanding of the world. The longtime employees, who knew me well, were warm and treated me like family. But even when I worked to the point of exhaustion, my monthly pay was barely enough. I stopped going to the doctor because the medical bills were too much. I was overwhelmed with anxiety about the future. I had no education, no money to start anything new. And even if I started studying now, what would be the point? Whenever I felt weak, the sneering faces of the neighborhood kids, Jessica, and my classmates would flash through my mind. Days passed in a blur as I pushed my body to its limits, dragging around the weight of my anxieties like chains. It happened while I was anxiously checking the deadline for the next product. Suddenly, a sharp, tearing pain shot through my chest. My strength drained from my body, and I collapsed onto the floor. My chest. I struggled to breathe, gasping for air, unable to take a breath. My mother, holding my convulsing body, screamed, "Somebody! Call an ambulance, quick!" The lack of sleep and the grueling work that stretched late into the night had taken its toll. I was diagnosed with a pneumothorax due to overwork and had to undergo emergency surgery and a hospital stay. The doctors told me I'd need to be hospitalized for a week. "You need to take better care of your body," my longtime doctor said with a hint of anger in his voice when I saw him for the first time in a while. As I looked at the strands of gray hair at his hairline, I realized how much time had passed since my last hospitalization. His stern lectures hadn't changed, but now, I could feel the kindness behind his words that I once only found intimidating. After my morning checkup, I went to the hospital courtyard. There was a small bench next to a flower bed. This had always been my favorite spot at the hospital, where I had spent much of my childhood as a frequent patient. Though it was already past noon, the courtyard was nearly empty, with only a single book left on the bench. Is this someone's forgotten book? I thought as I opened it to check for a name, and I recognized the title. It was a children's book I had read before. "Do you want to borrow that?" "It's a kid's book, but it's pretty good." I turned around at the sound of a clear, confident voice. Standing there was a young woman in a hospital gown and a medical cap. That was the moment I met my future wife. Emily, who was 2 years older than me, was frail like I was and had been friends with books since childhood. Whenever we met, she always had a different book in her hands. She said she was the type who never bought books because once she read them, she remembered most of the content. Her biggest complaint was that the hospital library had run out of books she hadn't read. Watching her lively expressions change in front of me, it was hard to believe she was seriously ill, if not for the hospital gown. She was incredibly knowledgeable, quick-witted, and never flaunted her intelligence, which I found admirable. According to the nurses, her bright personality made her a beacon of light for the children and elderly patients during her long hospital stays. "So, you're working at your parents' factory now, huh, John?" "Yeah. I couldn't go to school. And I've been so busy with work at the factory that I haven't had time to study at all." "What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying I'm lucky to have free time?" "No, that's not what I meant." As I panicked, she flashed a refreshing smile. "I'm just teasing you. I'm sorry. But I kind of get it. You have this look on your face like you want to change but don't know how." She had read my troubled thoughts so easily that it made me break out in a cold sweat. "You're very perceptive. Spending so much time here, I started to pick up on these things. Everyone here is struggling with something." A cool breeze swept through the courtyard. Emily gazed at the flowers swaying in the flowerbed with a serious expression. "My job is to stay alive." "Your job is to stay alive?" "Yes. To breathe as long as possible and make the most of each day. And to not worry my family." "Emily. And you have something too, something you were born to do." "Do you really think so?" "Of course. Birds have the sky to fly in, and fish have the sea to swim in, right?" You're right. You have your own path too, even if you can't see it yet." Then came the day of her discharge. "I never thought I'd be the first one to leave," Emily said with a bright expression as she finished loading her luggage into the taxi. The fresh blue dress she wore suited her far better than the pale blue hospital gown. Well, I've got a few more chronic conditions to deal with," I replied. After a few more words of farewell, she said, "I'm going back to college to catch up on what I missed during my leave. It might take a while, but I've made up my mind to see it through to the end. What about you? Have you found something you want to do?" Pushed by her earnest gaze, I confessed my true feelings. "To be honest, I'm still not sure. I've never really thought about what I want to do before." "I see." The approaching farewell made it hard to speak. But there was something I absolutely had to tell her. If I let this moment slip away, I knew I would regret it for the rest of my life. For the first time in my life, I felt this strongly about something. "Emily, if I do have a path, and if it really leads somewhere free and open, I want to walk beside you on it." "What?" When I finally mustered the courage to look up, I saw Emily's eyes wide in surprise, as if she couldn't believe what she just heard. "Why?" "I have a chronic illness, and I might not have much time left, you know?" "So do I." "You were the one who said we all have a path. So now, you have to take responsibility for that." "Responsibility, huh?" You've really learned to speak up. Maybe I've learned that from you." "I see. That makes me happy. Okay then, let's start by being friends." She gently took my outstretched hand. With tears in the corners of her eyes, Emily smiled like a blooming flower. That was the moment when my life began to take on meaning. After being discharged, the first thing I did was expressing my gratitude to my parents and everyone at the factory. While I was resting, they had all worked tirelessly to keep the factory running. One of my seniors sent me messages to cheer me up, while a colleague brought me my favorite snacks. I had been so caught up in my misery that I failed to see the warmth and kindness around me. I was determined to express my gratitude for all their support. I also shared the dream I had formed during my hospital stay. I told them about meeting Emily and how she had given me a new dream. It might sound foolish, but even someone like me has found a path I want to follow. I don't care if people laugh at me. I was ready for them to laugh at me, but as I spoke, not a single person did. Isn't this the first time you've ever said you wanted to do something? If there's anything we can do to help, just say the word. We're practically family, after all. With the understanding and support of my parents and co-workers, I decided to take the high school equivalency exam. Whenever I had spare time, I studied, and on scheduled days, Emily would tutor me on the parts one didn't understand. On days when I couldn't avoid overtime, my colleagues would give me a nudge near the end of the shift. Go on, get out of here. You've got studying to do, don't you? Since the day I set that goal, I couldn't afford to waste a single day. After all, Emily's condition continued to fluctuate, with her health improving one day and declining the next. Once I passed the exam, I moved on to preparing for college entrance exams. Honestly, this was the hardest part of my studies. With advice from those around me, I desperately searched for an affordable and well-rounded university. During that time, I encountered countless unfamiliar words, formulas, and diagrams, information that overwhelmed me to the point of nausea. Yet, I pushed myself to cram every bit of knowledge, from the basics to the advanced, into my brain. And the result of all my sleepless nights and relentless studying was success. I passed. I could hardly believe it. I thought for sure I would have to repeat the process since I had barely attended school. Forgetting to even turn off my computer, I rushed to the factory where my parents were. When I arrived, despite it being a day off, I found a large group of employees gathered at our home. In the break room, there were large plates of elaborate dishes that my mother and Emily had apparently prepared together. I never imagined they would all be celebrating for me. Everyone, you did all this for me, thank you so much. Don't worry about the money. You'll pay us back when you've made it big. Now, get back to work starting tomorrow. With those words, a firm pat landed on my back. The group photo, taken with my tear-streaked face, is now a cherished memory. As the cherry blossoms bloomed, I found myself a brand new college student and a new dad while Emily became a new mom. We didn't have a wedding ceremony, as per Emily's wishes. The physical strain was too much, and she had scolded me, saying, "If you have time for that, you should be studying." So, my time in college was completely dedicated to studying, and the only gift I could give her was a simple, inexpensive ring. But despite everything, Emily gave me the most precious gift of all. After enduring severe morning sickness and a difficult delivery, she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl who resembled her. We named her Lily. Balancing studies and childcare was overwhelming, but with the help of our families, we managed. I often found myself soothing Lily while reading textbooks, only to fall asleep together. There were countless times when I cried along with her, not knowing why she was upset. Even after I graduated and secured the job I had longed for, there was no time to rest. Most of what I had studied didn't apply to the real world. No matter how hard I had worked at my desk, the practical challenges were completely different. Every day reminded me that I was starting from scratch. When I returned home late at night, I would find my wife and daughter sleeping hand in hand in bed. The sight of their innocent faces washed away the exhaustion of the day. I would place my hand over theirs and savor the happiness of the moment. But those happy days didn't last long. One evening, after returning home earlier than usual, I carried my daughter, who had fallen asleep from playing, to her bed. As we sat down to have tea together, Emily spoke. "I'm going to be hospitalized again the day after tomorrow," she said. "What?" "My mom's coming to help for a while, so I'm sorry, but I'll need you to take care of everything else." "Wait a minute. Don't tell me, it's, again?" "Yes. The tumor has grown. I've been having terrible headaches lately, and the doctor said I need to be admitted immediately." "No. Why didn't you tell me something so important?" "I'll take a leave of absence first thing tomorrow. I'll be with you for the appointment." "Stop." Emily's voice, low and firm, was something I had never heard before. "Don't underestimate me. Do you know how long I've been dealing with this illness?" Her voice trembled slightly. "When we first met, I told you, didn't I? What my job is. To live. You taught me that." "Yes. So, I'll be fine. You just make sure to take care of Lily first." With those words, the strong-willed Emily left the house without showing a hint of weakness. As she began her battle with the illness, I entrusted the household to my mother-in-law. Because of my irregular work hours in the antibody lab, I barely had any time at home. It was rare that I could finish work on time, and on my occasional days off, I was often called in for emergency shifts. The moment I sat on the sofa after coming home, the tension would release. And I'd realize just how exhausted I was, so much so that I could barely lift my arms. Eating instant noodles after work became a routine. The taste didn't matter anymore. I bought the same brand in bulk out of sheer habit. Eating and then immediately passing out. If my wife saw this, she would definitely scold me for such a lifestyle. Seeing the pile of discarded instant noodle cups, my daughter, Lily, now in 5th grade, started preparing meals for me to eat later. The gentle flavor of her homemade omelet brought back memories of my wife's cooking, which I hadn't tasted in a long time. Lily, you're such a great cook. With your food, Dad can keep going forever. One day, as I was praising her cooking like usual, large tears began to roll down Lily's cheeks. What are you talking about? You just don't get it, Dad. If you collapse too, I'll be all alone at home. That's why I want you to at least eat something nutritious. Please, I'm begging you, don't push yourself any further. Her desperate grip on me made me realize the truth. Looking at myself after a bath, I saw a gaunt, pale figure. No wonder she was worried. Remember? Breathe as long as possible and live each day with joy. And don't make your family worry. My wife's cheerful voice from when we first met echoed in my mind. That's right, I had promised to protect them. I'm sorry for making you worry. But don't worry. Neither your mom nor I will ever leave you alone. As I hugged the sobbing Lily, I renewed my vow to protect my precious family. After a long while, I managed to take some time off, and I decided to take Lily to a high-end restaurant. The visit was initially for a work-related meeting, but the discussion wrapped up quickly, leaving us to enjoy the meal. Even though we were better off now, I still wasn't used to such formal settings. The dishes were as exquisite as their reputation, with beautifully presented appetizers, and Lily and I exchanged smiles. We couldn't help but smile together. After eating something like this, you won't want to eat home-cooked meals anymore, will you? No way. Home-cooked meals are still the best for me. A cough from the young waiter brought me back to reality. Apparently, I had spoken a bit too loudly. Sorry. I quickly glanced around. The restaurant, with its semi-private rooms, maintained an elegant silence. Good thing we're in a semi-private room. But really, Dad, you don't need to be so apologetic all the time. You should carry yourself with more confidence. Sorry, Lily. There you go again, apologizing right away. I chuckled inwardly at her puffed-up cheeks. Who would have thought that the same word, sorry, could feel so different depending on the situation, filling me with such contentment. Wow, that was delicious. This place is amazing, right? Yeah. Let's come again. So, Dad, what are you going to do about that offer? Well, I'm thinking of turning it down. My priority is to protect you and your mom. I see. Yeah, that's the right choice. We enjoyed a blissful evening, but just as we were leaving the restaurant, it happened. Well, if it isn't. I knew I recognized you. You're Germ Boy, aren't you? A shrill voice suddenly pierced the quiet night. I turned to see a woman who had caught my eye inside the restaurant earlier, pointing at me and shouting. Even in the dim light, her strong old beauty was unmistakable, and I felt the blood drain from my face. There was no way I could forget. Germ Boy, the nickname that had haunted me since middle school. You're so filthy and disgusting that Germ Boy suits you perfectly. Right, everyone? The days when I had to endure Jessica's cruel taunts, surrounded by classmates who looked down on me, came rushing back. Seeing her again, I realized her hateful beauty hadn't changed at all. In fact, the condescending expression on her face seemed even more intimidating now. Fortunately, her group, having finished their meal, had dispersed, leaving us alone in the empty street. But now, Jessica, slightly drunk, was eyeing my daughter next to me with the same lack of regard. Is that your kid? I guess kids of middle school graduate really do turn out ugly. It's surprising to run into someone who quit school halfway in a place like this. My daughter, standing beside me, showed no signs of fear and faced Jessica, who was the same age as me, with calm defiance. Excuse me, what do you think you're saying to my dad? You have no manners at all. What? What's wrong with calling a middle school graduate what they are? The one who lacks education here is you, old lady. Old lady. I can't believe it. What a rude little brat. Kids of middle school graduate really have no upbringing. How disgusting. At Jessica's vicious words, Lily's face went completely blank. Seeing this, a chill ran down my spine. Why did my daughter's quiet demeanor feel more terrifying than Jessica's raging anger? Aren't you that lady from Kando TV? How does a brat like you know anything about me? Lily continued, unfazed by Jessica's sudden unease. I see you a lot on Kando TV's social media. You post quite a bit, don't you? Lily pulled out her phone and opened Kando TV's social media page. Sure enough, Jessica frequently appeared in the posts. Oh, really? Well, I'm in charge of PR at Kando TV, so I guess I stand out. I work at a company that has nothing to do with middle school graduate losers like you. You must be jealous, right? It seemed Jessica was eager to boast about her job. The mention of Kando TV made her eyes light up with pride. Ha! Hey, Dad, maybe you should just have this woman fired. I don't want to do business with a company that employs someone like her. Lily's exasperated comment made Jessica burst out laughing. Ha! Kids of middle school graduates really are stupid. You think you can get me fired? This is why lowlifes who don't know their place are so annoying. Listen, you and I live in completely different worlds. Worlds that never intersect. Got it? What? No, I don't get it. You're dumb and mean. Just because you're rich and educated doesn't mean you can say whatever you want. Lily, that's enough. When Lily gets angry, her language becomes sharp. She shows no mercy, even when dealing with Jessica. Jessica, her pride wounded, turned red with rage. What? You insolent little brat. Maybe I should shut that mouth of yours. As Jessica furiously lunged toward Lily, I moved to intervene, but before I could, a voice cut through the tension. What's going on here? An older man in a suit appeared, causing Jessica's eyes to widen in shock. Mr. Thompson. Lily quickly stepped forward and spoke. We were just having dinner with Mr. Thompson from your company. What? Jessica looked back and forth between us and Mr. Thompson, utterly bewildered. Mr. Thompson, this can't be true, right? What are you talking about? This is Lulu from the kids' balanced cooking class. Mr. Thompson's words left Jessica stunned, unable to believe what she was hearing. Lulu, as in, from that kid's balanced cooking class. Jessica seemed at a loss for words, standing there dumbfounded as my daughter smiled sweetly at her. Lily, under the name Lulu from the kids' balanced cooking class, had become quite well known. During my wife's battle with illness, Lily had taken photos of the meals she made for me and posted them on social media. Her nutritious recipes quickly gained attention, and now she was a popular child culinary expert with over 2 million followers. Her simple, love-filled meals, designed for busy parents struggling to provide balanced nutrition, offered a unique theme that resonated with many. Young people and homemakers, in particular, eagerly started replicating my daughter's recipes. The hashtag Lulu became widely recognized on social media. For privacy reasons, she never showed her face, but the name Lulu had become a household name across Japan. Wait a minute. If you're Lulu, then that means your father is. Yeah. After all that, I went back to school and became a doctor. Since my profession was included in Lulu's profile, it wasn't surprising that she knew. To be honest, I was still amazed by it myself. Who would have thought that someone once treated like a germ would grow up to become a doctor? And not just any doctor, I specialize in neurosurgery. Every day is still a struggle as I cram the latest medical knowledge into my head. But I've done it all with the hope of curing my beloved Emily's illness. Regarding the matter we discussed earlier, we would greatly appreciate your consideration. Mr. Thompson and his team asked deeply me and my daughter. At today's dinner meeting, the president of Kando TV himself had requested to do a feature on our family. We'll have to decline. Lily. I was taken aback as Lily decisively announced her response. Do you know what this woman said about my dad earlier? She called him a middle school dropout germ. She's been mocking him the whole time. I don't want to do business with a company that employs someone who would insult the person I respect most. What did you say? What lies are you spewing? Shut up. Where's your proof? Show me proof, or I'll sue you for defamation. Without hesitation, Lily pulled out her phone from her pocket. I've been recording your insults. Maybe I should post it on my social media? Even in the face of Jessica's furious outburst, Lily remained unshaken. I couldn't help but think that she truly took after Emily. Jessica's face turned pale. Oh? Your face looks a bit more ashen than before. And your skin is breaking out too. You should really be getting more vitamin A from broccoli and carrots. Want me to send you some recipes? I can DM them to you. Jessica slumped to the ground, defeated. I deeply apologize for the unpleasant experience you've had today, John. We will take strict disciplinary action against Jessica. So please reconsider allowing the interview, Mr. Thompson pleaded, turning to me. What? Mr. Thompson. Jessica looked up at him with desperate eyes. But Mr. Thompson silenced her with a stern command to keep quiet, leaving her speechless. Leaving the situation in Mr. Thompson's hands, I finally turned away and walked down the road leading home with Lily. In the end, we politely declined Kando TV's request for the interview. Even without Jessica's behavior, I would have refused. Emily is still fighting her illness, and for me, nothing is more important than my family, Emily, Lily, and everyone around us. However, if our family's journey could one day offer support to someone else, that would be a wonderful thing. Thankfully, Emily's condition is improving. If things continue to go well, the day we can live together as a family again might not be far off. Later, the incident Jessica caused at the TV station became a significant issue within the company. Despite Mr. Thompson personally requesting the feature on Lulu, Jessica ruined everything. As a result, she was transferred to a subsidiary, but even there, rumors spread, and she eventually resigned. Looking back now, I realize that the long years of bullying were just the prelude to meeting the family I love so dearly. What matters most is to cherish the people in front of me. To breathe as long as possible, to live each day with joy. And to not make your family worry. These are the guiding principles Emily taught me. If I hold on to them, I believe I can overcome whatever lies ahead. If you hadn't dropped out of school, Dad, your life might have turned out differently. I recall Lily's words, spoken suddenly on our way home. Do you regret the way things are now? The way her brows furrowed and her eyes glistened with tears tugged at my heart. One day, if I'm ever asked in an interview, no matter who in the world asks, I think I'll proudly smile and say, even if I could choose a different path, I wouldn't hesitate to become a middle school graduate. Because I know that path would lead me straight to meeting Emily and Lily.